Thank you, Ryan, for that kind introduction, and my thanks to the Planning Committee for a wonderful conference. I've enjoyed every session. I'm delighted to be here at the last session you'll attend before you head home, because I'm hoping that you will keep some of the suggestions in this presentation in mind as you're driving home, flying home, whatever. We're going to be talking today about our advocacy history, some of our successes, current issues, and future prospects. Let's start with what we've accomplished. In 2007, a very bad bill for ESOL students was adopted by the Florida legislature. Unanimous vote by the Senate in favor of the bill, presented by the very influential head of the Senate Education Finance Committee, Stephen Weiss. The bill would have eviscerated the training requirements for teachers of English learners. In the House side, we had some champions. We had 6 votes against: Marco Rubio, David Rivera, Carlos Lopez Cantera, Anita de Flores, Bill Heller, and Darren Soto. When the bill passed, we had to decide if we were going to try and get a veto. Everyone told us not to do it. Everyone told us that there was no way that we would be able to get the governor to override such a large majority of votes in favor of the bill. But we realized we could not, in good conscience, not continue to do everything we could in order to protect the children. So we decided to go ahead. We brought in our colleagues from the organizations that were the plaintiffs in the consent decree. That's the NAACP, LULAC, SALAD, AHEAD, the Florida Farm Workers Association, Haitian Educators. I'm forgetting one, but that gives you an idea. It was a large group and a group that has stuck together over the years. They helped us. And together, we were in fact able to get the veto. It was a peak moment. We couldn't believe it. It was just astounding. And we are very glad that we did not listen to all of the political pundits who told us it couldn't be done. The next success story has to do with a much harder job, which was negotiating with the Florida Department of Education. They were trying to accomplish through regulation what the legislature had not been able to accomplish while in session. It took us 7 years of arduous work. Once again, it was a coalition of organizations that helped bring this about. From Sunshine State TESOL, I recall that Esther DeJong and Candace Harper were key members of a task force set up to consider the plans of the Florida Department of Education. The State Board of Education met on some of these proposed rules, and we set up a series of visits to those state board members individually about 3 weeks prior to the board meeting, so that we could sit down with them, go over the materials we prepared, and explain in depth, without any 2-minute deadline facing us, what the issues were. We got a no vote from Bob Fernandez on the worst of the lot, which would have given teachers who gain certification in ESOL solely through examination a pass on the additional in-service that is required through the consent decree. We also went to our local elected officials on city and county commissions, 12 of them. We presented them with a resolution, found a sponsor in each chamber, got their approval. We ended up with 12 city and county commissions in 5 counties that adopted the resolutions supporting our position. And I think that was key to the fact that after the 7 years, late in December of 2013, the Department of Education agreed to our proposals. These are the lessons we learned. We need to be able to communicate quickly with one another. We were fortunate that we already had the advocacy mailing list in place, which permitted us to do just that. I invite you all to join that mailing list. Just send an email message to me indicating that you want to join, and I'll take care of it. My email address is rcastro, R-C-A-S-T-R-O, @fiu.edu. rcastro@fiu.edu. We learned that we have to coordinate with other organizations in order to reach our goals. None of us can do it alone, but together we can get a lot done. We learned the importance of media. If it doesn't appear in the newspapers, it hasn't happened. We were fortunate that we were able to persuade many of the education reporters to take an interest in our cause and to cover it. We learned that local elected officials, the city and county commissioners, can be a big help and are often willing to be a big help. We learned that you have to meet with elected officials before they get into the meeting, because by the time they get to the meeting, the decisions are probably already made. And we learned the value of values-based messages. Cesar Chavez taught us that a long time ago. It's not about the grapes, it's always about the people. It was not about the training hours, it was always about the children. Our current issues focus on the Every Student Succeeds Act and Florida's plan to implement it. At the beginning of the drafting process, the state of Florida wanted to substitute the language arts assessment for the English language proficiency test as a means of measuring English language proficiency. State and national organizations were able to persuade the state not to do that. So English language proficiency will continue to be measured in Florida by the Access for ELLs 2.0 and English language proficiency test. We're okay on that. On subgroup support in A, B, or C schools. Subgroups are all the ethnic groups, the children on free or reduced price lunch, students with disabilities, and English language learners. Those subgroups, the state has acknowledged, have to get some support even if they are in schools that are otherwise rated A, B, or C. The problem is that the support they get is a lower level of service called tiered support, not the targeted support that is provided to D and F schools. However, we made some progress there. We have a lot of work left to do, however, on these 3 issues. English language proficiency, according to ESSA, is supposed to be a contributor to the school report card grade. The school report card grade per se is not mentioned in ESSA. What they talk about is a means for differentiating schools. But Florida has chosen the school report card grades as the mechanism for doing that. And they have found a way to work around the requirement to include English language proficiency as part of the calculation for the school grade. That means schools are not responsible or not accountable for teaching our students the English language. Subgroup results are not reflected in the school grades, which means that the content courses the school is not responsible for the content courses that our students take. And ESSA says that states must do everything possible to provide native language assessments in the content areas. Florida does not do that, and that's a problem. So these are the three big issues that we are still working on in regard to Florida's ESSA plan. Fortunately, an ESSA plan can be changed at any time. All it takes is an act of the legislature to make that happen. So in the 2020 legislative year, and also in 2021, we'll be working on these issues: native language assessment in the public schools and the establishment of an English language learner advisory council. In addition, we will probably be working to provide more emphasis on collecting and making easily accessible data that's needed to come to proper decisions regarding English language learners. You can help by staying informed and by asking your state officials why Florida doesn't provide native language assessments and why we don't have a state advisory council for English learners. You can also send a statement of support along the following 9 lines. I support native language assessment and the establishment of an advisory council for English language learners with your name, title, organization, and city. All of the background information that you would need if you choose to advocate on behalf of these issues are available at this website, esolflorida.org. I invite you to visit the site and to subscribe to the site. Now what we need to think about is the future. We've had some great success, but when you look at it in retrospect, much of it has been simply protecting what we already had, and the rest of it has been baby steps forward. The question is, how can we turn those baby steps into giant strides? Let me give you an example of what I mean. In 1987, a state advisory council to the Florida Department of Education had been established. You'll see some faces here you recognize. Rosa, Eduardo Padrón, Marta Becker, Juan Cao. Arnilda Badia was working at that time as a member of the Florida Department of Education, and Dr. Roger Nichols was the deputy commissioner at the Florida Department of Education. They were the key people from the department that worked with the advisory council. While Arnilda was working at the department, she arranged for the council to be established. After it was established, she moved on to become a member of the House of Representatives in Florida. Legislation was issued asking the council to cooperate with the Florida Department in issuing a report on the needs of English learners and recommendation for improvement of programs for English learners. The council suggested a number of things, including weighted formula funding for English language learners. Arnilda, as a state representative, was in a position not only to vote for it, but to see that it actually came to pass. And so today we still benefit from this action that was taken back in the 80s regarding weighted funding for ESOL students. Another example. In 1996, this photo was taken of the Dade County School Board the morning of its last session for the year. This was the last meeting of the board that had been elected countywide. In November of 96, the boards would henceforth be elected from single-member districts. It took me until literally this last day of my term in office, my last board meeting, to gain the approval of